All right, let's talk about something you've probably seen 1,000 times in medical news, especially when it comes to new cancer drugs. It's called the hazard ratio. It's one of those key statistics that can feel a little intimidating, but trust me, by the end of this, you're going to understand exactly what it means. You'll be able to look at a clinical trial result and feel way more confident about what you're seeing. So let's dive in.
So, picture this. You're scrolling through the news and you see a headline about a new cancer drug. The article says the trial showed a hazard ratio, or HR, of 0.68. Now that sounds scientific, right? It's a very specific number, but what does it actually mean? Is that good news? Is it a game changer, or just a tiny improvement? That's the big question, and that's exactly what we're here to unpack.
Okay, so here's our game plan. It's pretty straightforward. We'll start with the basics. What even is a hazard ratio? Then we'll get into how to decode all those other numbers you see alongside it. We'll look at a really cool way to visualize the data called a survival curve. After that, we'll put it all into practice with a real-world example. And to wrap it all up, I'll give you a super practical checklist you can use anytime you see these results.
All right, first up, let's get right to the core of it. What is this number, the hazard ratio, actually telling us?
So here's the key thing to remember. The hazard ratio is all about speed. Think of it like a race. It's comparing how fast an event happens in one group versus another. Now that event could be something like the disease getting worse, or in some studies, even death. It's not about the absolute probability that it'll happen, but rather the rate at which it happens. It's a measure of speed, not of certainty.
And of course, you can't have a comparison without two sides. The hazard ratio is always a relative measure. So, you've got your treatment group. These are the folks getting the new drug being tested. And then you have the control group. They're getting what's already considered the standard treatment or maybe a placebo. The hazard ratio is the number that tells you how the treatment group is doing compared to the control group.
Okay, so how do you actually read this number? It's actually super simple, and this is maybe the most important takeaway. If the hazard ratio is less than 1.0, that's good news. It means the new treatment is reducing the risk of the event. If the HR is exactly 1.0, well, that means there's no difference at all between the two groups. And if it's greater than 1.0, that's not what you want to see. It means the new treatment is actually increasing the risk compared to the standard.
Okay, so we've got the basic concept down, but in the real world, you never just see the hazard ratio by itself. Let's talk about how to decode the full result, the way it would actually appear in a study or a news report.
All right, let's get back to our example number, a hazard ratio of 0.68. Now we know what that means, right? Since it's less than 1, it's pointing in the right direction. It's a good result, but that single number is really just the headline. The rest of the story is in the details.
So this is what you'll typically see, a whole string of numbers. Let's break it down piece by piece. First, the HR of 0.68 itself. A really simple way to think about this is to subtract it from 1. So 1 minus 0.68 gives you 0.32. That means there was a 32% reduction in risk for the treatment group. That's the effect size. Next up, you see this thing called the 95% CI, or confidence interval. You can think of this as the range of certainty. The researchers are 95% confident that the true effect lies somewhere between 0.52 and 0.85. Now here's the crucial part. Notice how that entire range is below 1.0? That's huge. It tells us the result is probably reliable. And finally, the p-value. A tiny p-value, like this one, basically means the result is statistically significant. In simple terms, it's very, very unlikely this result happened just by pure random luck.
And that brings us to what I like to call the golden rule. Seriously, if you remember one thing about the confidence interval, make it this. If that range of numbers ever crosses 1.0, you have to be super cautious. For example, if the CI was, say, 0.80 to 1.20, that means the true result could be less than 1, but it also could be more than 1. It even includes the possibility that the result is exactly 1.0, meaning no effect at all. So if that CI crosses 1.0, you just can't be sure the effect is real.
You know, looking at a string of numbers is fine, but sometimes a picture really is worth 1,000 words. And in clinical trials, that picture is the survival curve. It's an amazing way to actually see the story that the numbers are trying to tell you.
So when you look at one of these charts, the rule is incredibly simple. Higher is better. If the hazard ratio is less than 1, which is what we want, the line for the new treatment group should be above the line for the control group. It's a direct visual. It means more patients in that treatment group are surviving or not having their disease progress over time.
And it's not just about one line being higher than the other.
What you really want to see is a nice, clean, consistent separation between those two lines as time goes on. That gap is the treatment benefit in action. If the lines stay apart, it suggests the benefit is real and it's lasting over time, not just a fluke that happens early on.
All right, enough with the theory. Let's make this real. We're going to take everything we just learned and apply it to an actual scenario from a breast cancer trial. In this case, it was a new targeted therapy going up against standard chemotherapy.
Okay, so here are the results. Let's walk through it. The hazard ratio is 0.72. First check, does the confidence interval cross 1.0? It's 0.60 to 0.86, so no, the whole range is below 1. That's a check mark. But now look at that second line, median overall survival. This is a super important number. It basically tells you the halfway point, the point at which half the patients in a group were still alive. And you can see a real difference here, 18.6 months for the new therapy versus 13.1 for chemo.
So, let's translate this into plain English. That hazard ratio of 0.72 means a 28% reduction in the risk of death at any given time. And that survival data? That gives us a concrete, real-world number, a 5.5-month gain in median survival. You see how putting those two pieces of information together gives you a much richer, much clearer picture of what this new drug is actually doing?
So now let's put this all together into a simple checklist. This is something you can actually use anytime you come across a news story about a clinical trial. Think of it as your go-to guide for cutting through the noise.
4 simple steps. That's it. Number 1, the very first thing you look at is that confidence interval. Does it stay completely on one side of 1.0? Number 2, assess the size of the benefit. Look at that risk reduction. A 30% reduction is a lot different than a 5% reduction, right? Don't just look at the p-value. Number 3, if you can find the survival curves, and you often can in the actual studies, look for that nice, clear separation over time. And finally, number 4, and this is so important, balance the benefit. A few extra months of survival is a huge deal, but you also have to consider things like side effects. What's the trade-off?
Okay, let's do a quick lightning round of the most important things to remember. Hazard ratio is about speed, not chance. A number less than 1 is a good sign. The confidence interval is your best friend for judging if a result is reliable, way more useful than just the p-value. And never, ever look at the HR all by itself. Always look for other data, like median survival, to get the complete story.
And I want to leave you with this final thought, especially for patients and families who are trying to navigate all this information. The data is one thing, but how we talk about it is everything. The goal should always be to translate the numbers. So instead of getting caught up on the HR is 0.72, the conversation should be, this treatment reduces the risk of something bad happening by 28%. That's the stuff that matters. It's how we take all this complex science and turn it into something that actually helps people make sense of their options.